Welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast, produced by Focus Shift Films and sponsored by Welsh sports fans. I'm your host, Daniel J. Harris. I'm a filmmaker and entrepreneur working across sport, and I'm a huge fan of sports content. This podcast is my chance to meet amazing people who are doing amazing things in the sports content space and to share their stories with you in the hope that it inspires ideas. On this episode, we have the amazing Harry Harris, broadcaster, journalist and writer with over 40 years experience in the industry, covering a variety of sport. Harry, welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast. First of all, you've had an amazing career covering sport. Where and when did it all start for you?
I think it all starts here on this podcast, actually. You know, it's fame at last. Where did it start for me? Well, a long time ago on local papers, and then the London Evening News, and then the Daily Mail, then the Mirror, then Express, and all sorts of other things going on, Telegraph, and various other papers. So, it's been a long time, 50 years. Many people think I should give up by now, but I'm still going strong. I'm doing a book with Paul Trevillion, and he's 90, just turned 90. So he's still working.
Absolutely. Do you mean if you're enjoying it and you're doing good work, then why should you stop?
Indeed. And as you know, I'm embarking on a new film.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, working with John Warrington at Crafty Entertainment on a fantastic film, and that's how we met a few days ago. So yeah, thank you very much for jumping on the podcast and chatting to me. Across your 50 years, I think you've probably seen so many changes in the way that stories are reported, created, and consumed. Kind of how has sports journalism kind of changed across that period?
Do you know, in one way, it hasn't changed at all. You know, journalism is what it is. It's the acquiring the thirst for news and features and comment, and making it accessible to the public, and making it readable and entertaining. So that can take up many forms, and of course the form has changed unrecognisably over the years. So when I first started, if people wanted to know what was the headline breaking news, they had to buy the paper. And I recall from my early times queuing up after a match, an hour after a game, queuing up at the newsagent to get my pink edition to find out what people were saying about the game. So you don't need that now. You can find out within seconds, and everyone's got an opinion. So we all can see how the game has changed unrecognisably.
Yeah, I think social media has just kind of changed how people consume content, and it'll never be the same again, will it? Like you said, you had to read the papers, you had kind of particular writers telling their stories. Now anybody can share their stories, can share their views on a particular game or a particular sport or a sports person, and reach millions of people with a touch of a button. So yeah, everyone's become a sports journalist in their own heads, I suppose, and sharing their thoughts on the match.
Indeed, nothing wrong with that. You know, people could have their views. They used to write me letters. I don't know how long it took to get to where I did. And we used to publish one or two, but now online, they could, you know, there's volumes, reams of comments. Yeah, fine, except when the comments become vile and abusive, and except when they're fake. We're increasingly not knowing how much of this news consumption is fake.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Do you mean there's no way of kind of filtering this stuff now? It's a kind of free for all on social media where anybody and everybody can say whatever they want. And that just means that there's a whole host of nonsense and chat bots and all sorts of stuff out there. And it's difficult to know what's fact and what is fiction. And you know, we all know about fake news and things like this, and anyone can spread any narrative they want. So it becomes tricky to find the real authentic voice and the truth within some of these stories.
Well, I mean, one of my many hats is I've been for a couple of years now the sports development director at SmartFrame, and that's revolutionising the photographic image. But one of its many benefits, has a status of being authentic. So, one point, you can't steal the picture like you can now on current formats. You can swipe it right, left, do whatever you want with it, and manipulate it into whatever you want. But the smart frame is the equivalent of Spotify for music and YouTube for video. It streams and embeds and protects. And it returns the IP to actually people who own the IP, which is unusual. And it has a monetizing benefit because you can advertise within the actual frame of the picture. So it will revolutionize content to that degree. And newspapers like the Times, who have a history of wanting to report the news accurately, they believe it's actually vital to their demographic and their ethos. So it won't be long before a lot of people have heard of smart frame. At the moment, it's still very much under the radar.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, I checked out the website yesterday and was having a little look at it. So like we talked about, the internet becomes a kind of free for all where you post one thing and it can end up on computers and smartphones all around the world. And there's quite often no attribution, is there? So someone can screen grab it, share it, and it could gets to the end user with actually no attribution to the person who's created that piece of content. Where, yeah, if smart frame is tracking that and allowing people to retain ownership of their IP, then yeah, there's more of these things needed, I think, to control how content is shared, I think.
Yeah, I can be as boring as the modern day journalist and throw you loads of stats. So there's 3 billion images a day out there. 2.8 billion are stolen every single day. 1.5 trillion a year. And I would say in the next 2 years, any image of any consequence will be on smartphone.
Oh, fantastic. And so what's your role within that then? What do you do? Are you out there canvassing the sporting world and finding content creators? What does your role look like at SmartFrame?
Well, I'm fast tracking them to the sports industry because quite clearly it is very valuable to the sports industry to have this extra source of income. So many clubs are getting into hot water with their financial fair play and their finances. And here is a completely fresh, new, clean source of income that would be beneficial to all the clubs. Why wouldn't they want another source of income? And quite substantially in a lot of clubs. But also the benefits we've just discussed of authenticating their content. But also for having fan engagement. You know, there's such a big disconnect between supporters and the clubs these days. You know, it started way back many years ago with escalating transfer fees and wages, and it used to be a working men's sport, but now it's for the corporates, it's for the elite, and we've even just had, such a controversy over the Brazil shirt. Should it be yellow? Should it be blue? And the England shirt, should we mess around with a flag of St George? Of course we shouldn't. But the real scandal is what they charging: £124.99 for the shirt. And for children's sizes, £119.99. First time shirts for the England team were in three figures. I mean, that's the real scandal. I mean, how can anyone allow that? The Football Association should really be brought to. You wonder why the government need a task force and, new regulator. I mean, this is just an example of sheer greed.
Well, this is it. Like football's changed so much over the last 10, 20 years. There's so much money needed to compete. And things like SmartFrame, where you're helping clubs to provide additional revenue streams that are not ripping off the end user. That seems like a much better way for clubs to raise a little bit more money than by charging £120 plus for a shirt. That is absolutely obscene. Yeah, I think you're right. That's the scandal, not the changing of the cross on the back, the price of it.
Indeed. Well, I think as we talked about 50 years, time I put something back. So I'm working on other sustainable ideas, to help the environment and help football clubs help the environment. It's a big ask because most football clubs are just, they're stuck in their ways. You wouldn't believe it, but they just, it's hard to get change through to people sometimes, and you just wonder about why so many clubs are in trouble with their finances and financial fair play. and why there is still the need for a government intervention to get the right kind of money filtering through the game to help support clubs that need it. It's almost beggars belief that still it really outsiders of the sport have to step in to sort it out.
Yeah, and like you said, there's obscene amount of money kind of at the top level, and then there's so many clubs that are struggling to make ends meet, but they want better players. The cost of players going up. Do you mean the cost of wages going up? A lot of them are passing that on to the fans then with the cost of the shirt, with the cost of tickets. But I think there's other ways that clubs can look at it. Like I'm talking with Swindon Town at the moment. They've got a hospitality area. Now that's only open for matches. That effectively is a bar, could be a sports bar, could be open 7 days a week, and that could be a useful source of income for them. They've already covered the cost of the building, of the materials, of the internet, of the gas, the water, the electricity. So there could be an additional revenue stream there, which isn't directly thrown straight at the fans and say, right, ticket prices are going up, season ticket prices are going up, shirts are going up. I think there's other services that they can provide without the price of a ticket and a shirt becoming so obscene. What are
Yeah,
the
but
things?
you might find, Daniel, that clubs like Swindon, got a little soft spot for them. Glenn Hoddle and Ozzy Ardiles came through there as managers, obviously, and I'm a big Spurs fan, as you know. But they have to pay staff. How many people would go to that bar? There's so much alternative possibilities for people, even in Swindon. So no, look, tell me how many clubs do you think, since the formation of the Premier League, have gone bust?
Oof. Across all four divisions, I don't know, 10, 20,
65.
65. Wow. Wow.
So, and the game is just obscene. We're rolling in wealth, isn't it? It is Wall Street gone crazy, isn't it? Uh, it's just
Money's not
I don't
real
know.
anymore, is it? Money's not real. It's like it's just ridiculous numbers that don't make any sense, and they're just
Well, £100 million for Tony Grealish. I mean, who's having a laugh, really? I mean, he's a fine footballer, can dribble with the ball. He could be effective, but he has a lot to learn. And I'm sure, going to Manchester City, he'll learn a lot. He might become a £100 million player, but Manchester City can afford it, so they paid it. But where would it stop? Ordinary players are being touted for similar amounts, and clubs like Chelsea fall for it. I mean, they're buying players at 60, 70, 80 million pounds, and they can't even go on the bench. So that kind of money. Swindon must be thinking, a club at the top end can pay 80 million pounds for someone who can't even get on the bench. And here we are wondering whether we could put a few pints during the week to make ends meet. So that's the obscenity of football. Either we want just an elitist game, but if you add up all the attendances, more people watch Football League, go to watch Football League than they do Premier League. So, and there's a call for it, they want it, and it's a local community, get your hands out those deep pockets and just pay what you need to pay.
it's absolutely mental. Like the price of some of the central midfielders that have changed clubs over the last 12 months. I was a central midfielder myself. I'm pretty sure I'd have been worth a few million. The kind of price of some of these players, and
Yeah,
they don't
even you could have
very
gone for
good.
50 million, I'm sure.
But also, I think there's like money is just so obscene in professional football now. And I saw a stat the other day where 40% of ex-professional footballers are at risk of going bankrupt as well. They're earning obscene amounts of money for a short period of time. And then, but they're spending obscene amounts of money as well. They're not thinking about the long term. They're not putting plans in place to continue having an income after football. And so many footballers are going bankrupt. People that have earned millions and millions of pounds. It's mental, isn't it? When the average person is struggling with cost of living crisis and an energy crisis,
Look,
and there's
we got
millions
to
going out.
we've got to admit, it's laughable that we need the government to intervene in our national sport. I mean, the people running the national sport haven't got a clue. So, what do you think people in government have got a clue? None. It's just bizarre. And you get all these recommendations. You can read through them. They're a book full of them. But it's simple. You know, billions of pounds every season in three transfer windows from summer to January to summer. billions are flitted away to agents. Just tax the amount of money football clubs pay to agents. 50% of the fees to agents goes to the football pyramid. Job done.
Riverside Sports Bar with Welsh sports fans is Newport's premier sports bar and has been voted best sports bar at the Welsh Hospitality Awards. With a range of huge TVs, an incredible food menu with burgers, dirty fries and much more, including vegan options, it is the place to watch sport. Visit www.riversidesportsbarnewport.com to find out more.
We have sport, national sport that's led at the top by people who are just not qualified to do so and no interest in doing so. It's just how much money they can acquire for the clubs that really own the Premier League, for example. It's not a Premier League as such. The clubs are the company of the Premier League. But if you look at the amount of money that's just poured down the drain from one summer through to January to the next summer, 3 transfer windows, billions are paid to football agents. Just tax the amount of money paid to football agents, 50%, job done, all that money filters through to the clubs that need it. 2 things will happen. One, you'll find that the clubs want to be circumspect and the agent to tell them where to go if they want their clients. So they still have to pay, and then they'll have to pay again 50% tax. So it will make them think about the level of transfer fees. It will make them think about how they could curtail agents' fees. But at the end of the day, they're lumbered with agents, and that money go where it's needed, not into agents' pockets.
Yeah, it's the game has changed so much, and yeah, the disconnect between players and fans and clubs and fans seems to be getting wider, especially at that top end, isn't it? And there's so many kind of issues within the game, and this brings me on to my next question to you. Part of what you do is investigative journalism, so you're lifting the lid on some of these things. You're looking at the dirty and the dark side of football. Is that kind of bittersweet for you because it's a game you love, but you spend your time looking at the very, very worst parts of it?
Ah, that's a good point. You're looking at the worst part. I mean, the worst parts of it aren't difficult to find. That's the problem. I mean, you talk about investigative journalists. I mean, the way they run their sport, it makes life so easy to find what's wrong. It's easy to find what's right. But I'm a football enthusiast. I mean, you asked where it all started. It started when I was trying to become a professional footballer, and my mum wrote to Bill Nicholson asking for a trial, and they came along and took 2 players in my school team, and I was left behind. But if you have a passion and a love for the sport, you want to report on it, and I couldn't believe people would pay me to go and watch matches. But there you go. But you also, as you get older, my age certainly, you want to continue to put something back to help improve it, make it right. First of all, it's hard to find anyone who wants to listen to you because they might think you have the answers, but they don't want to hear what it is.
Bury their
And
head in the
that,
sand. They'd rather not know.
yeah, exactly. And that's why you've got the government coming in, and it's just like going from one fall to another fall.
Yeah, I'd like you. I'm not, I mean, I kind of always wanted to be a footballer. I never made just a footballer. And then you work in football, and sometimes it feels amazing, and other times you're looking at it and thinking, man, this is a mental place to be. Like this is not the real world.
No, but that's half the fun at times, I'll be honest. But we're working on this new film, and the more you hear about it, because I think you were shocked by just the first couple of interviews that we were doing, the degree, and then obviously talking off the record about more stuff that we probably couldn't even put on the record. The degree of this kind of subculture that exists in football is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, absolutely. And Yeah, I've just bought your book about the killing of Emiliano Sala, and that's
I knew someone was going to read it one day. I knew.
as a Cardiff City fan, I'm very kind of keen to read that book. And like you said, it's some of the things we've been talking about this week. It's such a kind of murky story and situation, and you think, oh my God, are these things really going on? But
Have you started it yet, Daniel?
I haven't started it yet. I'm finishing my current book, High Performance, and then I'm going to be diving into that. So it's next on the list. I promise you that. And so you've written that book about the killing of Emiliano Sala. We've also written a lot of other books as well. So how many books have you written now?
Around 90.
Around 90, fantastic. And tell me a little bit about some of those. What were your favorites to write? You've written about all sorts of players, clubs, managers. Which ones were your favorite that you really kind of dived into and thought, I love this. I love this person. I love this situation, or I love this story.
Well, I really only take on the task of writing these books if that criteria is fulfilled. I don't really enjoy writing about people I don't like.
Fair enough.
I'd rather not, because I probably know too much about them, and I know they're not going to talk about it in their book. So people like Pele, Ruud Gullit, George Best, Glenn Hoddle, Paul Merson. I see Paul Merson this week has been criticising very heavily why players like Tony and one or two others have been banned for such a long time for gambling. And you really got to listen to someone who's suffered with gambling addiction. I've written Peter Shilton's book about it. It's an illness. It's a disease. It's not something that it's not a criminal act that they should be banned for 10 months. And one of my great successes is to break the story about Paul Merson's addiction to alcohol, gambling and drugs, and to persuade him to confess. And I said to him that probably will save your career. Hadn't he have done that, he could have been banned for life. And what a loss to the game that would have been, But once you accept it's not a criminal offence, it's an addiction that is an illness and needs to be cured. He needs sympathy, not a sledgehammer to try and kill him off as a deterrent to others, because it isn't a deterrent. As Paul Merson was saying, in his day, when I first started, it was 70%, 30% footballers were hooked on alcohol, not gambling. Now it's reversed. It's 70% are hooked on gambling, and it's current. But by making an example of these two people, or Tony being banned for that length of time, it's just a nonsense.
Well, I think the kind of the performance levels of the game have elevated over the last kind of 10 years. And so I think it's difficult to have a drink problem and to continue to perform at that level, isn't it? So they're looking for other vices.
Ask Tony Adams, he managed it.
And then like the mad thing about Ivan Toney being banned, and then he comes back to play for Brentford with Hollywood Bet on his shirt. Do you know what I mean? They're the sponsor of the club. There's so much betting money goes into it. And then
you should be banning for 10 months whoever's responsible for putting that on the shirt.
It's mad, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of this is kind of part of the
because having spoken to psychologists, to medical people in writing Peter Shilton's book, and the amount of suicides by young people who are hooked on gambling, and a child of 6, a little girl who gets a teddy bear for a Christmas, and it's got the shirt on of the club that they support with a gambling emblem on it, and she thinks the gambling company is the name of her club.
Wow. Yeah, and then we wonder why the gambling is a problem. Do you know what I mean? When it's so
wonder no more, football is complicit in making it so, and complicit in those suicides.
Yeah. Wow. It's I don't think there's only any end in sight to this, as well as there, because money talks. So there's so much gambling money in football, they're not going to turn around and go, right, that's it.
No.
No more gambling companies to sponsor football shirts.
So some bright spark on in the government goes, let's ban the name on the shirts. But what about perimeter advertising? What about walking in and seeing the betting companies there taking bets? The betting adverts in the programs, the betting adverts, if you're watching on TV, it's wall-to-wall betting adverts. I mean, come on. It's like, how many years did it take for the government to really get a grip and ban advertising on smoking and put health warnings on cigarette packets? And we now realise it isn't very good for you, and you can't smoke in a restaurant and kill off everybody else in the restaurant. How long is it going to take to realise that gambling has the same effect?
Yeah, and that's it. And whilst money talks, those wheels turn even slower, don't they? So yeah, it's a difficult situation, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
But it will change. It will change. Just like
Okay.
it did with cigarettes, it will change with gambling.
And so just to go back into your books and your writing, you've just finished a book on the history of Spurs, is that right?
Yeah, I'm doing it with Paul Trevillion. So he's the world's #1 sports caricaturist. He has been recognised that for many, many years. In fact, he's shown me portraits he's done with Churchill. That's how far back he goes. So we're doing a history of Spurs in art form, really. It's just we've dug up all his art. He's doing more art, and it's a completely different look to any history book you've ever done. And it's worked out so well. We're encouraging Spurs fans to participate in it, to send us their pictures and their stories. And we're now moving on. We're doing the same format with Chelsea and Aston Villa and other clubs. Might even get round to Cardiff one day. But it really is completely different and a different feel to it. And we're going to have a great big book launch, and a lot of the characters that are in the book, Paul's framed some of the drawings and going to present those personally to them. And they're unique artwork. They're worth a fortune. So it's a completely different feel to it, and thoroughly enjoyable.
Fantastic. Yeah, it sounds good. I'd definitely like to check that out when it's available. Yeah, if you can do it on Cardiff City. It's their 125th anniversary next year. So there's a rich history there, and the only non-English team to win the FA Cup.
Indeed, but I'm wondering how many drawings Paul's done of for Cardiff. He's done thousands at Spurs, thousands at Chelsea, etc., etc. But you never know. I'll ask him.
There we go. Fair enough. And just kind of coming to one of my final questions now. So sport connects so many people. Kind of, in your opinion, what is it about sport that grabs us and keeps us coming back?
It's the beautiful game, isn't it? With all these layers of the dirty, grubby game underneath it, but it really is the beautiful game. It's art form, and it was art form when I first watched it on pitches that didn't have a blade of grass, loads of mud or snow, and you had players of unbelievable ability and balance to have played on those surfaces. Dave Mackay broke his leg and then returned and broke his leg again in his comeback game in the reserves. And that kind of courage when, breaking your leg now, people don't actually break their legs very often now, but, back in those days, it ended your career. But medical science has improved so much. But now they're played on manicured lawns that with lightweight shoes and balls that you can score from the halfway line or even your own goal kick. But it's still an art form, isn't it? And we've seen games recently where you just think, blimey, did Man United beat Liverpool 4-3? There used to be games 4-4 and teams like that, but it's just magnificent showmanship, isn't it? The drama, the skill, the twists and turns, the emotion that it creates. Even when the managers on the touchline, they've become characters. They didn't before, but they are now. What isn't there to like about football?
Yeah, it despite all its flaws and its faults, it still is the beautiful game, and it's theatre, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
It's
Go
pure.
along
It is
to be
pure form.
entertained.
In its pure form. Not all the things we've been talking about, but it's sport by people who just don't have that passion or understanding.
And it just connects people, doesn't it? Do you mean kind of from opposite ends of the scale? Young people with old people, rich people with poor people, they can all come together for a football match, and they can kind of be one, be in that moment together and have that kind of connection. And
Yeah.
that's what football does, I think.
Well, it's one of the things
Well,
we're trying to do on Smart Frame is to reconnect the fans with the clubs, to engage them in taking pictures and having a platform for them, for the club to see their pictures, see what they do, a proper connection with them. I wish that had been my idea, but it was one of the clubs that we were talking to came up with that idea. And it's something that all the clubs should adopt with the Smart Frame philosophy. It's something we are taking forward. And any idea to reconnect fans with their clubs must be a good idea. And I think this is a fabulous idea. And why aren't the clubs taking it up? You'd have to ask them. I'm baffled.
well, if any of them are out there listening or watching online, where can they find out more about Smart Frame and yourself?
Well, Cardiff, a prime example. You know, the chairman is an enlightened figure. We've met him, you know him. I've shown him Smart Frame. He likes it. I take it to his club. No interest.
Oh,
You know, people don't want to adopt it. It's just can't be bothered. You know, it's something new. It might take up some of their time. They might have to think about it. No, they can't be bothered. You know, it's really pathetic.
but if they do want to find out more, then the website is www.smartframe.io. Is that right?
That's correct. That
There
is
we go.
correct.
So
Or
anybody
contact
there-
me. I'm willing to speak to anyone about Smart Frame. I think it has a great value for the sport, for wider sports, for all sports, and eventually entertainment and all fields of life. Eventually everyone will adopt it, but it's hard to get people to understand that they should be looking at it.
There we go. So any clubs, big or small, listening or watching, then should get involved with Smart Frame. And what's your email address over there, Harry? So if they do want to get in touch, they can contact you.
Yeah, it's harry.harris@smartframe.io.
There we go. Fantastic. So hopefully that you'll get a load of emails now flooding in. There'll be a big uptake. So Harry, thank you very much for chatting to me, and thank you for those at home that are listening or watching. Thanks for indulging us, and hopefully you've enjoyed yourself. Don't forget to like and share this episode and subscribe to the channel for more content.